please fill out your evaluation form because you could win an e-reader. I'd like to now introduce you to Cindy Ferguson. She's our fourth panel speaker, and she's a CSO coordinator. She supervises the community service order portion of the adult clients on probation. Clients are placed at nonprofit and charitable organizations within the community. As institutional service coordinator, she also provides services at the federal institutions served by the John Howard Society of Simcoe and Muskoka, Beaver Creek, and Fenbrook, and Provincial Central North Correctional Center. She also runs a parole preparation and release planning group at Beaver Creek Institution, which is a program designed to assist federal inmates successfully reintegrate into their community. They cover such topics as resume writing, job search, apprenticeship, and trades. Welcome, Cindy.
I think this one's good. Well, thanks very much for having me. As was said, the John Howard Society of Simcoe Muskoka, one of our main goals in the John Howard Society in general. The John Howard Society is all across Canada, and we have traditionally been involved in prison reform and also in assisting those who've been incarcerated or who have criminal records to reintegrate back into society. And many different John Howard Societies have different programs, and some are larger than others. Our local organization is a little smaller. We've only been around for our own for about 5 or 6 years. And as was said, we have a few different programs, and I do the institutional and the community service order program. So within the institution, what John Howard Society stands for in general, and many people don't know a lot about our organization, but some people feel that we think that no one should ever go to jail and everybody, should be just, treated as, special and so on and so on. We don't believe that at all. But what we do believe in our motto is just and humane responses to crime. So what we believe is that someone commits a crime, they need to go to prison, they need to be accountable for that crime. And but we feel that being removed from society is the punishment for the crime, and that is as it should be. We don't feel that once they're in there, we certainly don't feel that they need to be treated. That's as difficult as it can be in there. But we feel that a lot of people have the impression that prison is not such a bad place to be, that it's like rumors go around, they have country clubs, and they have TV, and they have ping pong, and they have all kinds of wonderful things to do in there. Their education's paid for, and it's a great place to be. That's a myth. It is not a great place to be on any level. It's an extremely dangerous place to be. And many people have found great difficulty in there, but it's also a really good deterrent on many levels, because a lot of the fellows that I work with go in there once and they don't ever want to go back. And so they're very motivated to change. One of the things that was mentioned is that I do a pre-release group at Beaver Creek. So we've been doing these groups for about 5 years now. And what it is, it's a voluntary, it's a group they volunteer for. So we present about 8 to 10 weeks of information. We have guest speakers come in every single week, and we provide them with ideas about what to do to change your life, what to do differently that you hadn't done before that would allow you to change your behavior, etc., and how not to come back, basically, is the idea. So we have guest speakers come in and speak about resume writing. We have people come in and talk about apprenticeships to these guys. So it gets them thinking about how to be different when they get out. And they wouldn't be in our group if they weren't wanting to change. And that's something else that it seems to be kind of a myth. There are those who will repetitively commit crimes. There are also those who have only committed one crime in their life. There's also those who've gotten caught up. And there's 1,000 different reasons why people find themselves in jail. And many of them, again, because they're there and they have a lot of time to see what damage it's done to others, they have the capacity to see the harm that it's done to their families, their lives, and many times are just completely left in ruin gives them a really good opportunity to think about what they can do differently. One of the goals of our pre-release group is to assist them with that, with good information, with professionals coming in. We have a social worker that comes in, talks about insight, how to change your behavior, why you do what you do, things like that. Many of the guys that are in these groups are already skilled laborers. I have worked with a couple hundred guys now, at least over the last 4 or 5 years. I've had plumbers, carpenters, business owners, I have tool and die makers, there's tile setters, there's HVAC, there's accountants, there's just about everything and anything you can think of that is in prison. Very skilled and very talented individuals in there. Many of them, again, need some assistance in realizing that they can do things differently when they get out, and many of them do. There are many things that cause people to commit crimes, and recidivism is when they are in and out of prison a few times and they continue to get into trouble and come back. Some of the issues that cause people to come back to prison or re-offend are associates, so the people that they hang out with. Substance abuse issues, that's very prevalent and often cause of crime. Personal and emotional issues, of course, and again, mental health issues. Unfortunately, our prisons are full of people with mental health issues, and so that's another reason a lot of them come back. Employment or unemployment, lack of employment and good skills is another reason that they often re-offend. You can't get a job, you can't live on $500 a month. Ontario works, and quite often the temptation to find their way back into finding alternative methods of making money is very tempting, and away they go. Attitudes, of course, is a contributing factor. Community functioning, how you get along with others and work in the community, and then finally marital and family issues. So those are some of the things that will cause a person to re-offend. The number one issue that causes people to re-offend is lack of employment. There's been studies done, and I'm taking the statistics from that. So unfortunately, in our society today, we're having a lot of difficulty with finding employment and assisting those who've been in prison. It's becoming more and more difficult, unfortunately. The pardon laws have been made very difficult for those who, the cost is astronomical now. There are many people who now are looking for work and who had a criminal charge when they were 20 years old. And that's coming back now, and they're 45. They've been married, raised a family, had a job, and lived in the community for 25 or 30 years. Something changes and they're looking for work and they can't get it now because they have a criminal record. So we're finding that we're dealing with a lot of people who are working on those types of things, and it's causing a lot of difficulty. And it's difficult to say that I mean, there are many people who really want to make a difference in their lives and want to change, and they're finding it really, really difficult to find employment, and if they've had any kind of criminal record or been in prison. And it's unfortunate, but it's something that at the John Howard Society, we try and be encouraging. We try and, when it comes to working with employers or those who work in the employment field, some of the things that I would suggest, if I may, is, to speak with and work with people individually. Most of the guys that you will find, and certainly I deal with a different population, I suppose, because they are in prison, but many will get out. Most of them are going to get out, and so to further make their lives difficult as far as employment goes, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And I understand that with pardons and so on, we need to protect the vulnerable populations of society, and we at the John Howard Society would always agree with that. But the difficulty is if you're penalizing the punishment for a crime is to go to prison, to be removed from society, and very often lose everything that you have. So they serve their time and they come out. Further punishment doesn't necessarily seem to be needed, and those who are motivated to change often find that it's made so difficult to find a job because they have a criminal record when they're motivated to change. So we'd like to change that if we could, even a little bit at a time. But to speak to people who come into your office who have criminal records, or for those who are employers, in the room. If you are able to speak to them about their situation and what got them where they are, often, you know, that makes a big difference, to give them a chance. Many of them are very motivated to make those changes in their lives. And, you know, just asking them about their situation, and quite often you'd be very surprised at who they are and how they got to be where they were. And circumstances quite often get them where they are. But they, and if employers and potential employers are open to the possibility that these people are not just a criminal, they're quite often so much more. They're fathers, they're sons, they're, now I work specifically with men. But you know, and many of them are very skilled and just run into one situation or another. So our hope is always that people would be somewhat open to, you know, hiring people with criminal records and giving them a bit of giving them a shot. When you see some of the talent, the abilities that some of these guys have inside when you work with them, it's quite astounding, actually. And the ones that come to my group, there's been a couple of hundred guys go through my group, and it's a volunteer group. They're not forced to do it on any level. And so what that says to me is that they're motivated to change. So if, well, I guess the bottom line here, or what I'm hoping, is that with those who, you know, are employers in the room, or you know, work with those who are, if you know, people come along with criminal records, and if you're able to discuss things with them and you know, give them a shot, that's always, from our point of view, a good thing. Many of them are very skilled and very talented people. So I think that is all that I have to say. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Cindy. It's interesting to hear success stories, and it's great to hear that the John Howard Society their goal is to have a just and humane response to crime. And I think that it's our responsibility to help people who need a hand up or a handout, and help people integrate into our community, whether they have the criminal label or whether they have any label that's stuck on them. People want to change and do things differently. And it really takes a special someone to help them and to give them a hand up. And but just imagine if you could be the person who could change the life of one person. That's all it takes, is just to help one person. So we hope that you will be interested in doing that. We're going to have questions now. Just before questions, though, don't forget to fill out your evaluation form, because I have to repeat this every time so that you could win this e-reader. I do want you to win this e-reader. So, there's actually 3 of them being given away. So, fill out your evaluation forms. Susan wants you to know there's 3 of them being given out today. And now we're going to let you ask some questions. Please keep your questions short if you can and to the point. And Leanne will come to you with the microphone. So if you have a question of any of our panel members, please put your hand in the air and Leanne will come to you with the microphone. And don't be shy. There's a question behind you, Leanne.
Hello, my name is Fred. I'm from College Montreal, French Community College in Barrie. My question is for Sandra. Could you talk a bit more about the statement you've made on your first slide about Barrie being, in absolute numbers, the region who has the most immigrants? What does it mean?
So that was as far as a rural area. And so one of the things that our area of the province is considered a rural area, as are many other areas outside of the large metropolitan areas. And if you look at that actual rural and small town analysis bulletin, in terms of raw numbers, there was almost no comparison. so if you looked at a percentage, so for example, Port Perry, I think Coburg was another one, as a percentage of their population, they had higher numbers of well-established immigrants, but they were talking about maybe 8,000 or 9,000, whereas in our area we were talking about over 30,000 of well-established immigrants. And just when I talk in those terms, there's different categories depending on how long an immigrant has been living in a community. And so there's new, well-established was over 10 years. A new immigrant will be here from 0 to 5 years. But in each of the categories, no matter what, in terms of the raw numbers, we had the greatest numbers. But when you looked at them as a percentage of our population, because we're actually, from a population perspective, we have a large population compared to other rural areas. It wasn't as significant, but in terms of raw numbers. So in 2006, the raw numbers of foreign born in the Simcoe County area was 51,355.
Thank you. We have any more questions? A question up here at the front. Leanne, you better put on your running shoes. While you're waiting for the question, you could be filling out your evaluation forms. You may not have heard that you could win an e-reader today, but you can. All right, question please?
I just wanted to say to Cindy, I understand that it's important for us in an interview to ask, more about their crime, but there's legislation that stops employers or human resource managers from asking those types of questions. So employers would be probably a little gun shy to start asking about their criminal record. You can't ask that. So unless you have a second interview and you get to know that person a little bit better, I don't think I would want to go down that route. I don't know how other employers feel, but you could be sued for asking specific questions about that. So I don't know how we get around that.
Well, I didn't know about that, so first of all, thanks for sharing that with me. I know that, so if you found out, when you hire someone, they do an application that asks if they have a criminal record. And so if you were to give them an interview anyway, what you're saying is you can't ask them about the situation at home?
You wouldn't necessarily have on your application that do you have a criminal record. Certainly you would if it was a bona reason to find that out. So if it was an accountant and you're managing money, you'd need to know that.
Yeah, I think that on a lot of application forms, there's a thing that says, can you be bonded?
Right.
And everyone in the world can be bonded at the right price. But most people who have a record think that that statement's particularly there for them. And so when people can't talk to people about that, do you have any ideas how they might broach the subject, or how could they do that?
Well, yeah, I think that just to try and simplify it if we can, if you had someone in for an interview and you knew that they had a criminal record and you wanted to know more about it, I would expect that you could ask them, and most of them are very forthcoming about their situations. Very few will not tell you what happened and what the situation was. So the only thing I could suggest is that you could, just ask questions and try and design questions around the fact that, where are you and where did you come from, and basically, how did you get where you are, kind of thing. And I think if you were creative with your questions without outright saying, well, you have a criminal record, what happened here, right? And most of them are very forthcoming and honest in sharing information.
Okay. Where you would find it is there would be an employment gap, obviously, and you would ask about that employment gap, right?
Yeah.
So and that might bring it up, but I still, part of the plan would be gun shy about starting to delve into, because it can bite you in the butt later on if they don't get hired. That's my experience.
Well, I suppose it probably could, and I don't, I can't really speak for that, but I think that if you, again, in an interview, I've had a lot of interviews in my life, and a lot of things come up and you're able to discuss things, and I think for the most part, you would be able to gauge a person pretty good. That's all I can think.
Thanks, Cindy. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Riverside, Julianne.
Another question for Cindy. You didn't talk about any partnerships that you developed with the community, but as an example, if an employer was looking for someone and was interested in helping, someone with a criminal record get back into the community, could they contact your office? And that way, everything is out in the open, and that kind of addresses the issue from behind here, that now we know that we're dealing with someone that wants to integrate back into the community. So do you have a program in place that helps businesses with that?
We don't have a program specifically in place, but anybody at any time can certainly get a hold of us. If we'd be thrilled, if we had employers that were contacting us and said, I'm willing to give, to meet with your guys and give them a shot, and absolutely, we would love to. We don't have a particular employment program or anything like that in place. Some of the larger John Harold's have that, and they have employment services. We're fairly small, fairly new affiliate, but we would always be open to any kind of suggestions at all to help people get back to work. So a lot of skilled guys on the inside coming out, a lot. So yeah, it'd be great.